of Akira Toriyama's passing for too long. Obviously, we've been watching some anime. Me, like a absolute neat who doesn't go outside, especially because I hurt myself this week, so I haven't really gone outside. So I have been on a true anime binge.
Nice, and I have been catching up all my shows within an afternoon. So, yeah, that tucking me out a lot.
The two types of anime watchers: the one who watches it and the one who just never stops watching it.
the casual, nonchalant weeb, and the absolute neat who sits inside and just binges all day.
Who wants to go outside when there's a brilliant world on the TV screen?
Yeah, why touch grass when you can see people touch grass?
Exactly. Look, all right, I don't need to connect with people, all right? I watch anime for my emotional fulfillment.
Exactly.
Have you watched Frieren? All right, that shit's fulfilling me with nothing but joy.
I think honestly that's the perfect word for Frieren. It's fulfilling. That's how I would describe it.
I think I kind of looked at it when it was starting to come out, and I was like, ooh, I don't know. I'm not a huge fantasy fan all the time. I have to be in a real good mood for a fantasy anime. And then I think I read the description a couple weeks later, once it was kind of into production and kind of churning out, and I was like, oh, actually, this sounds kind of funny. I was like, you're telling me that you've made an entire show where the A plot was completed before I showed up.
I mean, that hasn't been done before. I've seen plenty of fantasy shitty isekai shows that do that. But this one, I think, takes a different emotional tone with it, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, it's one of those where it's one of those that's made me kind of sit there and be like, oh god, yeah, imagine living for thousands of years. You would just be so disconnected from people, and you wouldn't really know how to interact, because you're like, well, in the blink of an eye they're dead, they're gone.
Yeah,
what's the point of getting
I
to know them?
really like how they focus on that a lot. A solid, I would say 60 to 70% of the show is Frieren just kind of figuring out that she's kind of wasted her time and is enjoying her time with her friends currently, because she didn't do that with her other friends.
Yeah.
And it's a really good subtle message, I think. I don't think it's the overall message of the show. I think it's a bit more deeper than that, but it does a really good job at setting up subtle themes throughout the show that I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, it's nice to have a show be like, no, these moments are precious, just don't take them for granted. And I've always said, anime is a thing that teaches you more life lessons than most other things ever will. It wants you to grow.
I think sometimes you can get better morals from anime than in real life, but it really just depends on the upbringing, I guess, because I can't say for sure, but I've definitely learned some life lessons from some shows, and Frieren is definitely one of those shows because you get to appreciate the time that you have with everyone around you.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, she seems to appreciate mimics more than anything from what I've seen of the show so far, but every episode.
She's got a bit of a subtle feels for mimic chess. It's kind of weird.
I mean, I'm sure they're doing it for fan service, because they're like, how do we keep people watching? And it's well, every so often we'll just have her top half get eaten so that we have a good reason to just do an ass shot.
But they don't really overuse it that much. I know we joke about it, but that happens 3 times throughout the show?
Yeah, no, it's nothing. It's but it's a good little gambit. I kind of like it. And it's I think I got one of my favorite kind of responses from her, which is when they do the spell down in the dungeon in episode, I think it's 21, when they're going through the King's Labyrinth or whatever it was called. And it's they come across that mimic, and Fern's no, that's a mimic. We've done the spell on it. And she's like, well, that spell's only 99% accurate. And that 1% difference.
And then she just searches it anyway, and it's oh, it's a mimic.
And it's oh, it's a mimic.
Coming.
Shock horror. That 1% difference really doesn't separate the good from the bad when it comes to a mage. Bravo.
Yeah.
But it is I have been enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a really good watch. I think if people haven't watched fantasy before, like Mushoku Tensei or Slime and stuff, which is understandable, but I think this show takes a more serious tone that can be appreciated by basically all fans, I think.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like you're watching, like, I know that she is overpowered. Like, the whole point of Frieren is so many years alive, she's like the most powerful mage available, essentially. But it's one of those where you're like, it doesn't feel like you're watching something where your hero is just overpowered and there's no need to worry about anything ever.
No, it feels more like a story in this case. I feel way too invested in this journey, as you could say, and her story, because it's very intriguing.
Yeah, see, it's that, and I think it's got like a good little bit. It's got a good amount of like kind of B plot to it as well, where like you're looking at, you've got Fern and Stark and like a bit of a relationship type thing that seems to be trying to bubble with it, of like she's a bit shy and he's a bit useless realistically as a man. He's a good fighter but coward of a man. And like I think as well, like you get like all of the shots off where like you still get the story of the heroes, which honestly I live for. I actually really like just like a little cut back to what was going on with the heroes.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice to.
I kind of forget about them, to be honest. Like I know it's kind of like the building blocks of the show, and it does it really well. But sometimes I go like, who's the hero going again? What's he called? What's his name?
Himmelboy.
Himmelboy.
Himmel with his statues everywhere.
I also think Stark is a little bit underdeveloped sometimes, especially in this later arc, because it's just Frieren and Fern trying to get their magic license.
Yeah.
And Stark is kind of on his like little spiritual awakening and stuff, and it's not really focused on, which is understandable, but there's one more episode left and he's just kind of pushed to the side, which I don't really like.
Yeah, it has, like, I'm kind of hoping, obviously, that means second season coming and we're going to see, like, the awakening of Stark and he's going to go, like, mad. Like, he's going to be like, nah, Himmel who? I'm God now.
I would like to see more of Stark in the second season, because I do feel like he's the weakest protagonist, but that's not his fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be nice to see more scenes with him.
I was going to say, honestly, it feels like they kind of have him around at the moment just to be a problem solver for when they want to give a bit of like tension between Fern and Frieren. It's like, Fern's angry. Let's get Stark in on this episode.
I do
like,
actually think
he's
makes
more
a good
than
third
Fern.
wheel. To be honest, I like the three trio. I think they bounce off with each other quite well, which is really interesting because Frieren and Fern have quite similar personalities where they're quite kundere, as you could say, but it's a really good chemistry between the three of them.
Yeah. See, but again, I think I'm waiting to see what happens to it on my anime list. To be fair, I want to know if they're going to start like bombing it down to 12th when it's all over. They're like, all right, now it's shit. So back to Full Metal Alchemist being top tier.